Sometimes I've talked to people and they say, well, if I lived to be 100 or 200, I'd get bored pretty quickly. I can't understand that. On my morning walks over to MIT, I love looking at things and just thinking about all the physics that goes into things like waves or things like trees where there's cellulose on the outside of the cell. Life is mind-blowingly exciting. Sometimes we lose track of that. There's no better way to remember that than to think about what it would be like to die and not experience that. I want to cure aging. I want to make us all live forever. Before I got to MIT, I was told it was a bit like drinking from a fire hose. It's very exciting and it never feels like I'm doing something I don't want to do. I love learning, I love working with these classes. That's how I want to spend the rest of my life.
So when I first met Laura, I was very surprised by her enthusiasm and intellectual curiosity. She certainly was one of the most passionate, at the same time had this incredible support from her family. There were many nights when she would stay in until 2, 3, even 4 a.m. in the morning. And as I learned later, her mom actually picked her up at MIT at those times. I felt really bad for, being partially responsible for that.
There's this one moment where she turns to me, Dan, I think this thing of curing death is harder than I thought it was. It was just one of those poignant moments, in which she realized this is going to be hard. Laura was always sort of hell-bent for leather, just up for anything.
Laura was a very inquisitive, very energetic and happy child. Instead of just giving up or getting angry, she would channel her energies into trying to do something about it, create something.
So I said, sweetie, why don't you email this professor that I've heard about and tell her you're an 11-year-old girl from New Zealand and that you'd like to discuss what it would be like to have a life as a biological scientist. About 2 weeks later, I hear this scream, I'm in, she wants to see me.
So her family moved to California, and she came to work as a volunteer in my lab for several years. She is incredibly enthusiastic and very, very smart. By the time she left here, after a few years, she was taking the graduate student courses. Laura's first project was to take these worms that live 6 times as long as normal and to give them fewer calories and see if she could get them to live even longer, and she did. What the field really needs now are ways to facilitate the development of therapeutics. Maybe Laura can help to bring together alternative funding sources.
When I was a kid, I didn't really understand the concept of death. And I can't tell you what triggered it, but suddenly I just realized something was going to happen, some void was going to open up. And I started crying a lot and not really being able to imagine that there was this definite endpoint where we all had to die. That really brought home how important science is, because science had been fun before that, but now it was necessary. I think there are a lot of amazing projects people could be working on that they can't right now because of the way that the government funds research and the way that the venture capital industry doesn't fund early stage research.
We don't have centralized funding to research aging in the same way that we do for cancer, because everyone ages and everyone always has, and so people don't perceive it as a disease, they perceive it as this fact of life.
So my fellowship actually isn't a startup because it's more focused on the venture capital side of things. Okay. And I'm 17, I can't just start a venture capital fund and get hundreds of millions off the bat. Researching what good areas of anti-aging research are ripe for investment and how to link those up with the venture capital funds and find a way to finance long-term projects. You have tons and tons of ideas, and you may need to try several times before you actually figure out what you want to do. But don't be afraid to pick up and start over. I think what I'll miss most about MIT is the community that we have here. I feel like I haven't realized that I'm going to be leaving yet. I haven't opened that black box of, I'm not going to see these guys for a really long time. Having our last party, I did feel as though I was leaving behind what could be my first real community of classmates. And that was sad. That said, I think the fellowship is worth it.
She just turned 17. Throwing her in an entrepreneurial environment has its risks. But I think the greater risk is to get stuck in academia.
I think she'll be fine. She's very mature.
She already has taken a lot out of an MIT education. Perhaps it's about time for her to take the next step.
You know, who knows what she'll do for her whole life? She's so young. Who knows? Especially if she lives to 200.